invited as executive producer to be a part of the team. Let me just say two quick things. One is SCRUM and where SCRUM is set and the story that we tell about Frank and his team and the school and the city in North Carolina is representative of why we chose to bypass Hollywood, bypass Beverly Hills, and premiere our movie right here in Santa Clarita where I live.
Hey everyone, Selina here on this week's episode of Selina Thomas, SCV's HR Guru, where I have the great privilege and honor on behalf of The Signal to bring you the stories of the people in our community. In this week's episode, I had the exclusive opportunity to speak to the director, Thomas Morgan, and executive producer and longtime resident of Valencia, Jeffery Thompson, for the movie SCRUM, which makes its world premiere right here in Santa Clarita on October 10th at the Laemmle Theater. In this interview, the director and executive producer shared their journey on what it was like to bring this film to life, not only to theaters, but to premiere right here in Santa Clarita, and the backdrop of the community featured in this critically acclaimed documentary film is very similar to that of Santa Clarita. The coach and the director have been longtime friends. They share in what that was like to have this process not only evolve their friendship, but impact their community. I think it will inspire you. I'm so excited for you to see this sneak peek, but also more importantly, go see SCRUM October 10th at the Laemmle Theater. The premiere benefits the Santa Clarita Valley NAACP chapter. I am a proud founding member, and of course, it will give our community an opportunity to come together. I hope you enjoy this interview. In the meantime, until next time, stay safe. It's nice to meet you, Thomas Morgan.
Nice to meet you as well.
And Jeffery Thompson, I was so excited to be able to speak to you both today, not only about the journey in making this film, but also the parallels to what this film means to not only the community that you featured, but to our community, and that you're ultimately premiering it here as well. So I had a chance to kind of watch some of your conversations with your friend, Frank McKinney, and that it actually even evolved you guys as friends in this journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. Frank and I have been friends for a long time, 26 years, but so many of I think it was making the film in the midst of George Floyd, in the midst of him kind of taking a different path in his life that, I think really pressed us to have conversations, really hard conversations that we had never had, and so many assumptions that I make in my life that everybody's else's life, not just from color, but I think it's so many socioeconomic situations that everybody has the same opportunity. Suddenly you realize that it's not true, and I think that was really, I think it brought us a lot closer together to sit and have some of those conversations and really, not having solutions all the time, but, really just sitting with like, this is the way it is right now. And it was really interesting.
Yeah. And I think even if you don't have a result at the end of a conversation, there's an improved awareness. And sharing perspectives isn't always easy. And we've done this as friends, Jeffery Thompson and I, and amongst our group. And I think your movie not only highlights that opportunity, but just the constant commitment to making sure that diverse thinking emerges from any situation. So I definitely want to dive into that process for you.
Yeah, I will say there was one point in the making of the film. It's probably 10:30 at night, Frank's time, and he sees his phone ringing, and I called him and I said, "Hey, I just want to ask you this question. Has there ever been a time where I've ever insulted you or made you feel lesser of a man because of your color?" And he was like, "What are you talking about? Like, of course not, or whatever." But I said, no, I have to ask this question because, like, it finally dawned on me. There's so many times that we're just ignorant to the things that we say, and sometimes just I guess we don't understand how it makes somebody else feel. That like I had to have that conversation with them, and like it was really kind of an interesting point in the conversation in our journey together where like we both had to really think about like what happened and where we were in our relationship and where we were in our relationship to this issue.
And that's a powerful gesture for a longtime friend to make, that we hadn't even thought of that yet. So I was struck by that conversation. So to your point, Jeffrey.
Oh, no, I was going to add, two quick things. One is, if anyone's not familiar with, Thomas Morgan and his award-winning films, powerful documentaries that tell real stories. And I'm delighted as executive producer to be a part of the team. Let me just say two quick things. One is SCRUM and where SCRUM is set and the story that we tell about Frank and his team and the school and the city in North Carolina is representative of why we chose to bypass Hollywood, bypass Beverly Hills, and premiere our movie right here in Santa Clarita, where I live. Right, we did that because SCRUM represents, and what Thomas and Frank talk about, it represents what tens of thousands of suburbs around the United States are going through. We're all diversifying. We're learning how to have conversations with each other, how to value and include one another, and to have different kinds of conversations. And just as the conversation that Thomas just mentioned with his friend of many years, Frank, those are conversations that many of us don't have with a lot of our friends that maybe don't look like us or didn't grow up with us, or we're neighbors, but we really don't know one another. And so I think SCRUM represents, it's a great journey, but it tells so much. And it also represents just why we're talking right here in Santa Clarita in Southern California, why we decided to premiere in Southern California.
And I have to say, I have always been and known about and been a member of the NAACP in support of, and I couldn't be prouder than to have the endorsement of the Santa Clarita office for this film. Like, I feel like for me, like that's when you feel like your storytelling has pushed beyond any racial boundary, and it's kind of hit a chord of unity, and maybe like this is a better way to think about approaching some of these issues. And I mean, when we started first talking about this, I was ecstatic.
Yes, and I think to your point, it transcends the norm, and you guys have been innovative in the story, and then before you realize it, and I've only had clips, so I can't wait for the premiere, but I can already feel kind of the transformative thinking that has come from witnessing his journey, but also the evolution of your friendship and then your community. And if our community can get a glimpse of that, and everyone's journey is different, we will have an opportunity to see that it can be done. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the impact to your community since you've done this movie. And of course, you did it during really tumultuous times, but to have a team unite behind someone that they would not have normally taken the time to get behind. What was that like to see happen for your friend?
Well, I think he approaches a game like as a parent, the way you hope that every coach would approach the game, where it's always character and grades first, and then it's the game, and character being the most important piece. And I think like to watch that and to see the way that his players react and the respect that they have for doing the right thing, not because they're on the field or not because they're at practice, but doing the right thing because they're in a community, right? And they have an obligation not only to themselves but to the larger group. I think was really interesting. And whether he had won or not won or any of like the stories that were coming out of this film were so impactful. And like another side note, I had a sound person that showed up one day and we were filming on the field. And I looked at him and I said, I want you to pick out who you think out of this group will be the valedictorian potentially of the school. I said, just pick out one guy. And, he picks out a guy. And I said, no, that's not him. I said, want to try again? And, 5 times later, he's like, well, who is it? I said, well, it's
the
Pat.
most unlikely.
Yeah,
the most unlikely.
There, the guy with the long dreads. And he's just like, oh, my God, really? And I said,
really powerful.
Why not? Why would you think that's not? But it's almost like you have an idea in your head about the way things look, and the way
Right.
things work. And I think like disrupting that is really powerful, because then you have to rethink, like, why do I have these ideas in my head about the way things work? So
Yes.
it was incredible.
Yes, and I saw from your conversations with him not only how your friendship evolved, but even the father dynamic and understanding, because remember we talked about community and we haven't gained an obligation as a representative of our community to do the right thing. But you two men talked about your fathers, talked about that evolution in those relationships. And I saw a little clip of Frank talking about his dad and having, earned that, the dad saying, hey, you're messed up and I'm going to hold you to that. And I think for Frank, watching him be that as well for people who are not his kids, because he mentioned doesn't have kids himself, but becoming a father figure and owning that responsibility in the community to mentor, to shape, and then you can own the reward of their success. And I was so inspired by that comment.
I think one of the things that, is where our paths kind of split a little bit is I don't have a relationship with my father. I haven't had a relationship with my father in 15 years. And that's the one thing that we kept kind of going back to, is like this forgiveness, like, like the idea that people are going to mess up, people are going to make mistakes, people are going to act in a way that you don't agree with, but we have lost so much of that in our society, that ability to forgive, that ability to move past those events that we don't keep coming back to and pointing our finger at as the defining, moment of their lives in some way. That I think like it was really interesting, because I think that in and of itself is the George Floyd piece, right? It's like, okay, how do we ever move past this if we just keep making these separations of people? Like at some point we have to own it, and we have to forgive, or we have to move on, or we have to figure out a healthy way to rethink those ideas. And I think that again, like, this is all happening off camera. This is all happening after we're done shooting and I'm staying at his house, but I just found like I think that's why I was so engaged, is because I could see it then after we had these conversations. I could see it in him, more clearly.
Yes. And so for the journey between the producer and the director, how did that come about? How did you connect? And I know, Jeffrey, how important this story is to you to bring to our community, but just wanting to kind of get the backstory of how you were able to connect with Thomas Morgan.
Well, a couple of things. And I think that, when this is my fifth, producer credit, right? So being involved with the production, but it's only my third time being involved with a documentary that tells a story that is so worthy of more than just entertainment, right? And so this is a very powerful piece that reflects on sort of where we are as America. It reminds me of, I moved out to Southern California to work at the Walt Disney Company, and we were working on something called Remember the Titans. And that was with Denzel Washington, a big cast, and same kind of themes: a sports story, some civil rights issues set in the South. This is a real life Remember the Titans. When I saw what was being edited and what was being, some of the footage that Thomas and his team had gotten, I jumped all over the fact to lend my skills to help this become a success, because it's a real life Remember the Titans with a great lead character in Frank, who's an aspiring, inspirational coach that cares about his kids, with some underdog kids that are striving to leverage the opportunity they have to overcome challenges in their backgrounds, or challenges in where they were living, and with income levels or poverty levels, and to sort of overcome. So there's so many rich, wonderful themes, and I will back up and say that's why when we had the opportunity to say, can we get somebody like the NAACP involved, why it was so important. And by the way, it's why the NAACP jumped and found the courage to say, wow, this is really a great story that represents the kind of story that we should be promoting and telling across America and across the world. And so that's exactly what we're doing. And, that's just a few of the reasons why I'm just excited to be a part of this. And we think this documentary will deliver and cause all of us to have some different kind of discussions with our friends and neighbors and family members.
I think too, the interesting thing when Jeffrey and I first had the conversation, that he was really able to put his finger on that really few other people have been able to put their finger on, is you see Frank in this movie, and there's so many times where he just looks like he's upset. It's not upset, it's lonely. There is nobody else who can tell him how to navigate this as the only Black coach at that school, as the only one of the only Black coaches, if not now the only African-American rugby coach in the country, right? In a program that maybe it is experimental, or maybe not everybody wants him there, And so I think like that's when Jeffrey saw the movie and he said, God, you really hit on this loneliness. That was something that I knew because Frank had told me, but he knew from his own experience, his own corporate experience or life experience. And I was like, yes, yes, people will understand this, And I think that was really important. And that's when I just felt like there was a great connection between Jeffrey and I of, you get it. You totally get it. And when he said, remember the Titans, I almost fell off my chair. I was like, man, I couldn't have asked to be in any better company, right, than remember the Titans.
That's a great parallel. But to his point, that it's real people, that's a real person. I've had the opportunity to be lonely in my own way, being the first in certain situations, but my father was the first African-American principal and superintendent. So it resonated with me just in the trailer of his footsteps, but that he still had the courage to go forward. And so I think the community can appreciate that, looking back at it later, what that journey was like for him. So has that been premiered in North Carolina? Has the community seen your film, the community that it's based in?
No, it'll go there after it's in Newhall, after it's in Santa Clarita. Then the next week it will play in North Carolina and at a film festival. And it'll be the opportunity for the whole team to come in and see the movie. And the team hasn't seen the movie either. What I think is interesting is, you would think that with Frank's success and the stories that he's telling, that it makes it easier for him at that school. And it's made it no easier. The path has gotten no easier at the school. And I just, again, we build these institutions and we build these rules, and we build all of these things that aren't always inclusive. They're not always rules that are easy for someone to turn or change or whatever. And I think, there's so much of that bothers me far more than it bothers him, because there's something in me that says, no, this has got to be fair. And there's something in him that says it's never been fair. What are you talking about? And again, you just start then you start looking around for Franks in your own community, right? Well, who are the other guys who I can stand up for? Because maybe in that Q&A on October 15th, there are things that he won't say, but I will. There's no downside for me to say this is what I experienced. And so, I want to be that advocate, not just for him, but for people who find themselves in the same position.
That's very powerful that you would say that, and coming from your perspective and worldview, that you would take that on, knowing that you've watched your friend kind of bear the burden without any fanfare, without any complaints. And so that speaks volumes about you and your friendship. So I hope he has the opportunity to see this as well. Jeffrey?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and Thomas and I have had these kinds of discussions, and quite frankly, I love people like Thomas that have sort of that moral compass, right? And we look for that. But let me just tell you this: people like Frank reminds me of, in many ways, of many African-American men that have either grown up middle class or working as trendsetters in their businesses, or the first in their family to go to college. And people think, the average American thinks that, oh my God, you're so successful, you've overcome. And what they don't understand is sometimes you end up, bearing that burden, and that burden leads to loneliness. And I think that when you look at the film, you'll find, just as, I found myself, it was really easy for me to, when we started doing the clips, to really see like, wow, we really wanted Frank to be able to breathe and to allow his loneliness to show. And when I saw the film as it was put together, it was wonderful to get a sense of understanding of what he's going through. He's the first. His team is the first. It's in a predominantly Southern school in the South. It's very influential and wealthy in that town. There's some wonderfulness. There's a rags to riches. All of those things are there, but there's that sort of bittersweet, challenge that, how do you pull your personal life together? How do you lead when you've, sort of overstepped your skis, or you're leaning over your skis all your life? And I think that, Frank is a perfect character to quietly tell that story. And so I think that, you go back to it, Thomas put a great team together, which includes now other partners, and it includes the NAACP in a big way. And he was able to do that because of his vision for, this is the kind of story that needs to be shown and told. And it's much more than just entertainment.
And I think the other question that is brought up a lot, and Jeffrey and I spoke about it too, is like, authorship. Like who has the right to tell this story? Because there are many people who said, well, the white guy shouldn't be telling the story of the black guy like that. And I kind of go back to, well, it was because of our trust and our relationship that Frank trusted me. He's a very private guy, and trust me, he was the reluctant hero in this movie. Like he didn't want to do a lot of the things that I asked him to do. But I also thought, nobody's lining up to tell Frank's story, white, black, green, whatever. Like nobody was lining up to tell his story. And I just felt like it was in a moment in time where if we didn't capture it now, it gets too late. It's a dated story. And so I was happy to jump in. But I think, that said, this film will come out hopefully in 2023 as a scripted feature. And I was the first one to say it should be directed by a black man. It should be written by a black man or woman. It should be, like all of those.
Consulted by Frank, and
it should be
absolutely
all of those things and all of those opportunities, because the things that I wasn't aware of when we started are things that they bring to the table in their own lives that make this such a richer experience. And I don't know. I just find like the whole process has been really a way to start and have conversations that, as somebody who thought he was a pretty woke guy, I think, it's forced me to have conversations, and it allowed me more to have conversations that I've never had before, which Jeffrey and I have had many of those between the two of us.
Sure. And as this evolved, that awakening turns into action. And I think that's the part that, in the little bit that I've had an opportunity to discuss with Jeffrey and see for myself. So I'm a mother of athletes in a predominantly white community. So I relate to this on many, many levels. And I find it to be a very important opportunity for them as well. Because there's times where they can kind of go through things and not even realize that the field was not level, but that they had to bear the burden of that. And that's what, and I've talked to Jeffrey about this before, you have to be exceptional to level the playing field. They're not even realizing that they are exceptional, when you're paired against, a national field. You've done that organically because you had to. And that's where I thought Frank emerges. And then of course you find the humanity in this opportunity as well. So I'm excited to see that would evolve into a screenplay. I'm going to cast my vote right now for him to be the consultant, because it would make perfect sense. And I hope that as this starts to get shown in many communities, but in yours, that it has that impact. And just the little bit I've seen, I already know that there's such an excitement about it. I think we're almost sold out, right, Jeffrey? So we're excited about that.
Yeah, I was going to say the premiere is just about sold out. So if anyone is watching this soon, grab tickets and plan on joining us. And then we'll be talking later on about a unique fundraising opportunity that the NAACP is involved with in promoting the film, which is raising money nationally to help underprivileged kids get to college. And so we'll be talking more about that. But I was going to say one additional thing,
Sure.
and that is that I mentioned earlier that I moved out to Southern California and in Santa Clarita in particular to work at the Walt Disney Company and Disney Studios, and the kinds of stories that Frank is telling along with Thomas and this team, trust me, 15, 20 years ago, these are the kind of stories that couldn't get funding. Very tough to get funding for this kind of conversation. A lot of it was maybe because, people thought the story was too small or it was a wrong narrative. And, it sort of triggered me when you mentioned, your daughters being athletes, and that, sometimes, you take for granted those stories and they're not considered big enough. And, it's reason why it's so important for people to be engaged and, to have people like Thomas that are woke to a certain degree and understand that, there's always multiple sides to a story and shades of gray. And understanding that and valuing that makes us better. And so, I think we're trying to do that with SCRUM, and we're trying to do that with storytelling more broadly during and after SCRUM.
Yeah. And I think one of the interesting things about the Too Big was when, you go to the big streaming platforms that are really kind of controlling so much right now, again and again, I would get either, here's a very, small offer, almost felt like it was a gift. And because your story isn't big enough, and they would always end with the story's not big enough. I guess meaning that there was, I need Justin Bieber to walk through the background to justify the story or something. And I just kept thinking, no, that's because your algorithm is messed up. That's because so many more people can relate to the life of Frank and the father's son and the kids in this movie than they can to Justin Bieber. Like, that's the disconnect. And so, given the opportunity with the NAACP and with other organizations to just bring it to the audience and let them decide, I was like, that's the way we need to do it, because I do think this story resonates with so many. It doesn't matter what color you are or where you come from, you will find something in the story that you think, that is me. I know what that feels like.
And I connected to it as a mother of athletes, as a daughter of the first, right? And so I feel that your process is awakening into action. You have such an opportunity here for not only to bring the community together during recovery. In my promo about the premiere, I talked about the fact that here we are coming back into, being in the community again, being gathered, and why not let the first big opportunity be something like this? Because we all were shuttered during the George Floyd. And so I think the irony is that when we're coming out, we can come out to something that will inspire us to come together and be aware and communicate. And so I thank both of you today for taking the time to talk about this very important film right here in our community, premiering October 10th at the Laemmle Theater. It is benefiting the NAACP chapter right here, which I, like Jeffery, a proud founding member of the first chapter here. So there's a lot of things, as you pointed out, Thomas, that connect with everybody. The underdog story, the time for change, and certainly the pursuit of being community. So thank you both. I look forward to seeing you at the premiere, and I can't wait to see the movie.
Thank you so much.
Coach Frank McKinney, the only African-American head college rugby coach. What do you think that might mean?
I am looked at differently. I'm under a bigger microscope. When I started, I didn't even have any players. We brought in 15 players. 4 of those were wrestlers who had never played rugby before. One was the mascot.
Top K, keep pushing.
There's an opportunity to pull kids up.
Number 2 started hooker, Marshall Frank.
It could change their life. It could change their family. It could change a lot of different things. There is no plan B.
We don't skip steps in life. We don't skip steps in practice. We don't skip steps in training. That's the difference between losing and winning.
Frank is cognizant of the fact that there are doubters.
In America, there's always going to be eyes on you just being a minority. But I feel like that's part of our X factor.
Fast forward a year, we were ready.
There was the turning point season.
They started winning. It was addictive, that winning feeling.
We scored again. And then we scored again.
The referee just called the game early. It was actually pretty funny. The referee did one of these.
I think that's when it really started clicking for people that we were going to do something big at some point.
A wire-to-wire performance, Royals of Queens University.
In this country, I don't think everybody starts at the same starting line. I know in the back of my mind, if the program goes away, it'll be difficult for those guys.
Of course, I wanted him closer to home, but I didn't want him to feel stuck here.
So how do you react? Do you lay down? Or do you get back up and fight?
The old guard versus the new.
I love disrespect, because you know what disrespect turns into? Respect.
We're the underdog. The underdog for me is the guy, the commitment level is high. Meeting new friends, meeting new teammates. I think that helps them set different goals. Every war is won before it's fought.
We deserve to be where we are.
Tomorrow, we play for the national championship. Great.
Nobody knows what we're capable of, except for the guys in the circle.